Milk, the succulent nectar that you drink on the daily. However, most people do not know where it comes from or its history. Do you? Well, if your answer was no, then that's what I'm here for. And if it was yes, well, I'm here anyway. Today, I will be discussing the history of milk from the very first loner all the way to the modern milker. This is the history of how they touched cows.
Howdy, partners. How you doing? Today we're here with Quincy, and we're here to talk about milking. How you doing on this fine evening?
I'm doing pretty good. How about yourself, Eric?
I'm doing pretty fine. What do you know exactly about milk and its history?
Comes from cows, goats, and sheep, and pretty much any other living warm-blooded mammal. Not cold-blooded, though. Those don't exist.
Oh, yeah.
You're indeed right there, my good sir, Eric.
What do you know about its origins?
I do not know anything about its origins, really, other than it comes from animals, specifically mammals. I can make a rap with that, you know.
Oh, yeah.
Animals aren't mammals, but mammals.
Animals. And how often do you drink this milk?
Quite often. Milk is pretty good. You know, it's like.
Come on, Quincy.
And we're once again back.
Oh, God, that was my line.
My bad.
After a short intermission. Anyway, Quincy, how long have you been drinking milk for?
At my own mic, sir. You know, quite a while. Ever since the day I was born, you know, it's creamy. Like, it's good in your hot chocolate and your cereal. It's good for baking half the time.
Okay.
But it's just good.
So how often do you drink milk?
Every day. It's delicious. Love the stuff. Can't get enough of it.
If you don't know where this comes from.
It comes from cows.
No, I mean the history of it.
Oh, no, I have no idea where cows come from.
Well, that's what we're going to be explaining in today's section of the video. Oh, well, it's only going to be like 50 minutes long or something. So, we're going to be explaining that in this video.
And is that it for today, for you, Eric?
Yeah, I believe so.
You may think that the first man to milk a cow looked something like this.
Hey man, is that cow looking kinda thick or what?
Moo.
I don't know what's wrong with you half the time. Mark? What are you doing today now?
We don't know who the first man to milk a cow was, or why, but the earliest man that we do know of looks something like this. I'm going to milk that cow. Moo. From what we know, cows have been getting milked for over 10,000 years. However, we couldn't drink straight raw milk because of the lactose until around 7,000 years ago. The price of doing so would have been cramps, bloating, diarrhea, nausea, and or vomiting. But some people drank milk anyway during times of famine because apparently it's less painful than your body eating at itself. Before lactose tolerance, milk would be turned to yogurt, cheese, and butter to remove lactose. You know, to make it less painful. It would not be until around 6000 BC that humans would begin to evolve and spread lactose tolerance. And lactose tolerance was a great thing for those that had it, because they could live exclusively off milk. The raw milk was originally drinking by the farmer immediately after milking, before it could go rotten in a couple hours. The Industrial Revolution brought with it a demand for raw milk. However, transporting the milk was a problem because it carried with it diseases like typhoid fever, scarlet fever, tuberculosis, and diphtheria. The solution was to send it through the 9 rings of period of time, just like they did alcohol. The method was called pasteurization. But pasteurization wasn't a complete solution, since it did remove vitamin C from milk and caused an outbreak in scurvy when it was introduced in 1901. The issue was solved by reducing the cooking time to just a few seconds, though pasteurization would not become national standard until 1948.
Hello, sir. What is your name?
Edgar.
And how often do you drink milk?
I drink milk almost every day.
And what are your thoughts on cow milk?
I personally don't drink cow milk. I drink almond milk.
Have you ever tried any other type of milk?
No, that's the only type of milk I drink because it's lactose free.
You're lactose intolerant?
No, it just has less calories.
Sadly though, almond milk is not made via the process of milking almonds. It is made by grinding almonds and mixing them with water. The ground almond dust is then removed from the water through a process of filtering.
And I am here with a professional cow milker, or ex-professional cow milker. Could you state your name, sir?
Mr. McCuskey. That's all you're going to get.
Oh, okay. Fine. How long did you work as a cow milker?
I milked one summer season between, I want to say my junior and senior year of high school.
Jesus.
Yeah.
And what did a normal day of milking a cow feel like or look like?
So you get up at 4 o'clock in the morning. You go out to the dairy barn. You turn on the pumps, transfer the line to the tank, check the tank temperature, make sure that whole system's up and running. Then you go out. Our particular dairy was a gallery, meaning side by side. So you would go out and you would collect the milk pens, and we ran 4 milking pens. So you would collect all the cows from pen 1, bring them into the corral just before the barn. And then we ran a jingle fence. It was some chains that hung down to kind of push the cows into the barn. And your cows would come into the barn, and I think we were 5 aside. So 5 cows would come in on one side. We'd lock them into position, and you then rinse all their udders off because they're standing around in manure all day. We had towels. You would clean all their udders, and then you would go through and prime them. So you'd milk them by hand just to make sure they had no dry milk in their teats. They didn't have mastitis or an infection, and they would release their milk. And once you had them all, as you prime each cow, you then hook them up onto the milking system, the automated milkers that everybody's familiar with. And you go all the way down that side. And once you had them all hooked up on the left side, you'd go wash, dry, prime, hook up the right side. Right about then, the first side would be finishing. You would spray all of them with iodine to sterilize their teats and release them out. And they would go out and around back to their pen, and you'd bring in that side, reload, repeat the cycle, and you would go through. We were milking about 430 head in a shift. And so basically I get up at 4. I had to have the pumps running by 4:30, and I'd probably start milking around 4:45. I would milk until 9 in the morning. That's how long it would take to milk through all 4 pens. Then I would help either feed, build fence, or other maintenance on the dairy until about 11. Then I was allowed to go eat lunch and sleep until 4 in the afternoon when you started the second milk shift, because the cows get milked twice a day. And then at 4 in the afternoon, you'd start milking, and you'd go till about 9 at night, go to bed to get up at 4 in the morning to repeat the process. I'd work usually 5 days, and then I'd have 2 or 3 days off. And the dairy was in Fallon, Nevada, so I'd drive back to Reno to stay in Reno during my days off.
How long was the drive?
It's about an hour and a half.
Oh, Jesus. How did you feel after the day of work?
Tired. I mean, you're climbing up and down into corrals, you're climbing over fences, you're getting kicked by cows. It's very physical as you go up and down. And then depending on what we had to do, if we were building fence, it's manual labor for an extra 2 hours after you did your first milk shift. So just tired.
Just plain tired.
Yeah.
And how much were you paid for this?
$4.25 an hour.
Do you feel like it was worth it for the pay?
That's what minimum wage was, and so I got minimum wage.
So I think that is enough.
It was what it was. I mean, you're milking cows. It's not rocket science or teaching.
Fair enough. And what were precautions we're taking so that the milk was clean?
That's why we washed them, cleaned them with the towels. There is a filter in the milking system that will filter out any particulate, so particles, large items. Also, why you prime them. If you don't prime the cows manually, you don't notice if they have mastitis. So mastitis is pus, and so that would be really nasty to pump through your system. We also checked ear tags. So pin 1, pin 2, and pin 3 were clean pins. They weren't a big deal. Mm-hmm. Pin 4, there was something going on with those cows. And so typically once we were done with pin 3, we would actually disconnect from the milk tank. You move the piping to a dump sink, and we would introduce into the system. At each station, you could hook in a bucket, so to speak, and you could pump into the bucket. And so we would, those would never go in the tank. Any cow that threw mastitis, you wouldn't run. We would have to, when we release that side of the barn, you have to cut that cow. You have to catch it in a separate pen. And then it would come back in with the pin 4 cows to be milked out, because that's all dump milk. That's not going into our system. The other thing we had to monitor was the temperature of the milk. If it gets too high, you end up having to dump all of the milk. So the first milking's fine because you have X number of hours to get to temperature. So that's fine. But the second milking, if you went too fast, you're putting hot milk into the tank. The tank would warm up too far. And so you'd have to kind of monitor that temperature. And if it started to climb, you have to stop and just wait for the refrigeration unit to drop the temp. Once you had 2 milkings into the tank, you couldn't be fast enough to heat the milk, so it didn't matter. And you were good until we hit the end of that tank and it would ship out. I think it was every 4 days a tanker would come in, or once a week a tanker would come in and pump all of our milk out of the tank, and we'd start with a clean tank. At the end of every shift, you sterilize the whole system with acid and bleach, and then flush it. And then you would flush it one more time before you hooked everything up and put it back on the tank.
Oh. And do you feel like everyone took the same precautions as you did?
Some milkers are definitely better about cleaning udders and getting the manure off than other milkers. I was good about getting manure off. Other milkers are a little lazier, so they don't clean the udders quite as well, and so you get some green particulate on the filters.
How wonderful to know.
That's why I don't drink milk from the store.
Oh, Jesus. Do you feel like the industry has gotten better or worse since you stopped working?
The small dairies of Nevada have always been pretty solid. They're family run. They're run by families. My sister worked for the dairy on herd management and was part of the family. They gave her a house on property, and so I'd stay with her when I was working. Everyone who worked there was almost in some way related. Those dairies have always been good, and they will still be good. The technology's gotten better. Probably the filtration's gotten better. I think they're fine. The industrial large scale was bad and might always be bad. There's some really unique milking systems they now have. There's a few people running barns that have robots that do the milking. And actually what happens is the cow chooses when it wants to be milked. It's not done on a schedule like we did. They're all in the barn, and when they feel like they want to be milked, they walk into the milking chutes, and the robots will milk them out. And they track their ear tags and their milk production that way. It's gotten more advanced, a better understanding of what's going on.
All right. And can I get an A in the class?
I don't know. It depends on how good your paper is. I guess that's up to your AP Euro teacher.
Oh, you heard of Miss here, Miss LaRue. Please, just give me the A.
I didn't say anything. I said it's up to how good you do on this.
He agreed with the A. Well, thank you for your time, Mr. McCuskey. And just carry on with the video.
And that is the current state of cow milk. However, recent data trends show that the sales in cow milk are decreasing. So will the changes to the industry be enough to save it? Or will cow milk fall into the background of history forever?